It's National Signing Day Eve. We got a lot to talk about, baby. The transfer portal not open just yet, but starting to simmer. Not boiling. I would call it more of a buzz. And oh, by the way, we got conference title races being decided this weekend. Welcome into the hard count. It is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. I just mentioned, ton to jump into. Going to give you our winners in the SEC, in the Big Ten, in the ACC, the Big 12, all that and the like. Also, Notre Dame, man, give them their flowers, because they were the punchline on a lot of social media posts over the course of the last few weeks. NIU this, NIU that. All they did since then is have the number one margin of victory in all of college football. So we're going to go ahead and put some respect on Marcus Freeman's name, on the Fighting Irish's name, and also we're going to check in on what this could mean for the future for the Fighting Irish. I mentioned all of those teams that are, or those conferences rather, that have auto bids to the college football playoff more or less with the Big 12, ACC, Big 10. Hey, guess what? The Mountain West, I know a lot of us kind of forgot about everything that's going on over there, and a lot of us kind of forgot that Boise State may, in fact, have a first-round bye in the college football playoff. Ashton Genty still keeping that Heisman Trophy hunt alive. If they lose to UNLV, UNLV's in the dance, okay? So we're going to give you our pick at the end of this one. Glad to have you all here, man. I don't want to waste too much time giving a preface to the show because there's a ton to jump into. This is a quick housekeeping note, though. Y'all have been phenomenal this season. Crushing it on all of the social platforms, subscribing to the channel. I mean, doing numbers like Good Will Hunting when it comes to traffic, so thank you for that. Tomorrow morning, we will be doing a National Signing Day show live, not here, but on the On3 Recruits channel. So all that juice you've brought to this page this season, go take that over tomorrow to the On3 Recruits channel, all right? Stay tuned for that show time. That'll be sometime tomorrow morning, though, when everything's popping off. Myself, Josh Newberg right here next to me at the desk. We'll have Steve Wiltfong and Chad Simmons in studio. Like, bottom line, the best National Signing Day coverage in the entire industry tomorrow on the On3 Recruits channel. Make sure you are locked in over there. There will be a hard count later in the day, so just follow me on the socials, Instagram, Twitter. I will let you know when that show is going to go live. Those of y'all that have hung around and been with us for the better part of the last few seasons, you know we do things a little bit different when it comes to National Signing Day. So, again, on the Recruits channel. Going to say it one more time. Subscribe over there. It's going to be a real good time. Real good time tomorrow. All right. So before we get to the national championship discussion and the college football playoff discussion, the conference title discussion, let's go back before we go forward, as our friend in Baton Rouge, Hunt Palmer, likes to say. Y'all, it got chippy this past weekend during Rivalry Saturday, Rivalry weekend, if you will. You had some skirmishes at midfield. You had everybody and their mama planting the flag. Arizona State going off script, planting a trident. I'm here for it. I'm all about it. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not here for the dumb stuff, man. Like pepper spray and dudes punching each other before, after, or during a game. Like, that is all so far out of the realm of stuff we enjoy about college football. So, like, you keep that over there. But what I do want to make sure we say here is the public opinion around college football, something that, hey, hand up, your boy was worried about going into this season, is does it still have the magic? Still have that passion, still that juice? Because in the world of conference realignment and the transfer portal and NIL, I don't think it was irresponsible to worry about, like, hey, is this just going to become professional sports? Are we just moving into a world where, like, the logo on the helmet and having that Buckeye sticker on your helmet, or having the logo across your chest, is that just going to kind of fall by the wayside as maybe a secondary factor to how many zeros you got in the bank account? And I was on the front line, too, saying, hey, put zeros in these guys' bank accounts. They deserve to be paid. But that is fair to have that concern. What we saw this Saturday, again, outside of the dumb stuff, which we're not here for, it's encouraging to see that the seasoning, the magic for college football, the pride, the tradition, the emotion, it still means something to these guys, man. And for us as college football fans, it will always mean something. If you went to Alabama, or if you went to Ohio State, or if you went to Michigan, Auburn, wherever, if you went to one of those schools, it will always mean something to you. But the fear was that after all of these different evolutions in the sport that we love, like, you'd get to Michigan, Ohio State, and it would be a thing where, yeah, I care. I still absolutely hate the team up north, or I hate Ohio State, but that guy who's actually playing in that arena, he doesn't really care because he's all about the check. Didn't see that. In fact, based on what we saw, how chippy it got, like, you could tell me that if I had no idea that the NIL evolution had happened in the last couple of seasons, or that the portal was a real thing, like, you could tell me these guys actually cared more than ever before. You could convince me they were playing for money potentially. That would be my first thought. So all I'm trying to say here is we still have the magic of rivalry season. We still have the chippiness. We still have the extra emotion that separates college football from every other sport on the face of the planet. We say that pretty much every single show. We cover the greatest sport to ever exist, right? And we are extremely grateful and lucky for that. Rivalry weekend, as much as that dumb stuff is just frustrating and stupid and there should be punishments, hey, we stand with Kirk Herbstreit on that. It's good to see that the flavor of college football, the magic, the pageantry, the emotion, the passion, is still where it needs to be. You can still throw the record out the window when Michigan and Ohio State play. And I love it, and we're here for it. We're here for it. We're here for y'all, man. Hey, college football playoff rankings today, Junior, revealed tonight. Make sure you're locked in, as we always do on this platform. I believe Andy and Ari, which again, I mean, that show's on before us weekdays. Subscribe, tune into that. It's a good time. I believe they are going to be live as they typically are when those rankings are revealed, After they wrap up the rankings, that is, we have a reaction video on this channel for you, hot and ready, like Little Caesars. So all I'm trying to say is, if you want to be dialed into all things rankings, this is a place to be locked in. Very, very interesting situation tonight. And I tweeted it out before this, but this is a bit of like a selection Sunday on a Tuesday. We're here for that as well, because you got a lot of teams now that are not playing in conference championship weekends. South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss. Lots going on this weekend with teams that are not playing. Where does Alabama fall in that whole discussion? Because a lot of folks, your boy included, has said that he thinks South Carolina, speaking in third person now, I think South Carolina should be ahead of Alabama. Does the committee feel that way? We find out tonight, because the reason why that's important, if South Carolina is not ahead of Alabama or not ahead of Ole Miss tonight, it's not changing after a couple of games happen that involve neither Alabama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss. So all I'm trying to say is head on a swivel tonight. A lot going on. Going to learn a lot about these rankings as it pertains to the potential college football playoff field. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, if you're a Tennessee fan, kick them up and enjoy seeing where you fall in these first rankings. First rankings of since rivalry weekend, but the rankings before Selection Sunday. What I want to get to. We landed the plane. Good deal. Hey, the show brought to you by Prize Picks. All right. If you've been following us this week, or this year rather, vibes have been good. Make sure you're locked in. Code HARDCOUNT now when you play. $5 in lineups gets you $50 in promo funds. So I'll just be transparent with y'all. My guy over at Prize Picks hit me up and said, hey, we got a deal worked out where we need you to kind of fire off a little bit more of your picks on your social media page. And I'm like, say no more. So bottom line here is there is going to be a smorgasbord. Never said that word on the show before. A smorgasbord of picks for you on my social platforms for conference championship weekend. So if you haven't been following, you haven't gotten the game, code HARDCOUNT now, $5 in lineups just for playing. You get $50 in promo funds. Fade or follow. We'll have a good time. Appreciate y'all using that code. So one of the games that we have a pick for here, both a prediction and a prize picks for, Georgia, Texas, SEC Championship, Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, ABC, 4 Eastern. Everything you could want in a college football game is in this matchup, man. Texas favored by 2.5. Last time they played now in Austin, Kirby Smart lets you know, hey, we know y'all didn't believe in us. Everyone on game day, they got the Texas logo popping up for their graphic, for their game pick, and we're not favored. We're on the road. We're yesterday's news. Texas is the new number 1, and they went into Austin, beat them by 2 scores. Make no mistake, this game is for both the literal crown in the SEC and the metaphorical crown in the SEC. Because when the changing of the guard happened, when Nick Saban said, hey, thanks so much, I'm going to go do TV, y'all figure out this whole college football thing in the SEC, we all just sort of assumed, and I think rightly so, hey, Kirby Smart's the next guy. Kirby Smart's got 2 national titles. He is the new king, the new mouthpiece for college football. And I don't think that that's necessarily been disproven in any stretch to this point in the year. But I do think it's worth noting, if Steve Sarkisian, his first year in the conference, y'all, first year at the new school, first day at the new party, shows up and wins the SEC, we go to Atlanta next year in SEC Media Days, and we say, hey, this thing goes through Texas still. Steve Sarkisian's got the crown. You want to win the national title, you want to win the SEC, you got to go through Texas. Now, for Georgia, if they win the national title, Kirby's like, I am exactly who you thought I was. Are you not entertained? And it's worth noting now, too, like for Georgia, I don't think this has been the team that we really thought they would be. Like at media days, I'm talking about the weapons for Georgia. I'm talking about the dominance on defense. I'm talking about all these different pieces. And while that wasn't untrue as to the talent they have at those specific positions, they have not put it all together. Like I did not expect a year to be where Carson Beck's like near the top of the SEC in interceptions and Georgia has to throw to win football games. They go to 8 overtimes against Georgia Tech. Didn't expect that. Again, it's why the sport is so awesome. But I say all that to get back to the point about Kirby Smart. I don't know that it's a discussion. This is his best coaching job he's had since he's got to Georgia, to have this team in the spot they're at right now. Even after the loss to Ole Miss, even with all the question marks around their roster, even with all the things that we wanted and expected to see around Georgia and haven't seen, still got a chance to play 4 quarters and punch a ticket to the college football playoff with the first-round bye. Now, worth noting, both these teams, regardless of the result, will be college football playoff teams. I think that's fair to say. But neither one of these coaches has what I would call a bronze medal mentality. And bronze medal mentality is like, hey, we're just glad to be in the dance. We're glad to be on the podium. And like the people that don't have that mentality, your Kirby Smarts, your Steve Sarkisians, they align a lot with like folks that achieve greatness. Your Michael Phelpses, your Michael Jordans, your Tiger Woods. Like that's how these guys are dialed. So I just want to make sure we have that clear. There's going to be a lot of weak talking points during the week saying, well, it's the SEC championship. Do you really want to play? No, nobody's saying that in these locker rooms, brother. I promise you. You're going to get your best from both these operations for 60 minutes, and I love everything about it. For Texas, are you able to circle the wagons from a game plan perspective? Because when I saw Georgia walk out there and get 7 sacks and force 4 turnovers, that was the game. That was the game. Like, to call a spade here, Steve Sarkisian, whether it's on him, whether it's on Quinn Ewers, Texas was caught flat-footed. And I don't believe it was a thing where, like, Texas went to the drawing board and didn't feel great about their game plan going into this thing. Like, I think Texas probably brought their best to Austin in that first game against Georgia, and it wasn't enough. Wasn't enough. Why? Because I think Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, T-Rob, they game plan as well. They dial it up too. So in a rematch now, the difficult part about this is you both have already played a certain hand of cards. Can you go back to the deck, shuffle it up a little bit, bring something new to the table, and find a way to win? The thing I'm watching most closely here for Texas from a game plan perspective, outside of all the fun stuff with Steve Sarkisian getting in his bag, outside of all the pre-snap movement and how do you get the ball to Isaiah Bond and how do you help Quinn Ewers get in rhythm, we would be kidding ourselves if we didn't watch that game in Georgia Tech and Georgia and watch Haynes King go just stupid dummy for over 100 yards rushing and think, I wonder if there's another mobile quarterback on another roster that, I don't know, maybe had a package this past weekend against Texas A&M. I don't know, maybe it was talked about during the week on a certain college football show saying he would have a package. I wonder if maybe this is a game where we say, hey, Arch Manning, gave you a little, went well. We got some more bullets in the chamber in the Arch Manning package, okay? Now, I'm not implying that Arch Manning gets the keys to the offense in the second half full Tua Tagovailoa fashion. But I do think now that Arch Manning, if there's a spot that you're watching for Georgia's defense that you saw get exposed previously, we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't realize that a little bit in the Georgia Tech game. So just keep an eye on what they do with Arch Manning. I think that's going to be a massive, massive variable in how Georgia preps at the very least, and it could be how Texas attacks in a large way. For Georgia, same deal, man. Like you won that game with what you did up front. 7 sacks? Are you kidding me? Like it was abuse to call a spade here. I mean, Georgia got short fields pretty much every single scoring possession. That was the difference. Can you recreate that? Because you had Quinn Ewers out of sorts. I've said previously, I think some of that had to do with Quinn Ewers and his psyche going into that spot. The fact that he was off an injury, I don't think he was really totally in rhythm. Quinn Ewers, I know he's not totally healthy just yet. The ankle, we'll see, but like he looked good against A&M. Stat line wasn't perfect, the tipped interception, the fumble, whatever, but like he looked a little bit more Quinn Ewers-ish in that spot. So I'm watching the Quinn Ewers trend go up. I'm like, okay, if I'm Georgia, again, we got to bring something new to the table here. Can we get him out of sorts again? Because if not, that puts pressure on our offense to match scores and get a good thing going. Because that speaks back to what I was just saying a second ago. Like for the Georgia offense, I need the Mike Bobo special. We asked for the Mike Bobo special against Tennessee. We got it. We saw the Georgia offense, whether you want to credit Beck or Bobo, whoever, the way they throttled back or surged back, whatever kind of adjective you want to put there, verb you want to put there, to what they did in the second half and the 8 overtimes that followed against Georgia Tech. That was massive. I need it from the jump here. I need it from the jump because you're probably not going to get a Carson Beck 3-interception game. If you do, this thing gets ugly, just so we're all aligned here. I think that Georgia will bring it. I expect a lot of the tight end game to be involved here for Georgia, just transparently. The reason why I put so much pressure on Mike Bobo here is because I don't think that the Texas defense is as bad as they looked on the scoreboard against Georgia that first game around. You say, well, JD, again, they scored 30 on them. You're questioning what Georgia can do to the Texas defense? Yeah, I question what they can do to the Texas defense because they really had one touchdown drive. And that one touchdown drive had like a double reverse flea flicker situation. That was awesome that Mike Bobo dialed up, but like it took some trickeration to have a true touchdown drive against this Texas defense because they are one of the tops in the country when it comes to yards per carry allowed and points per game allowed. 3.1 yards a carry and 11 points a game, which is, I believe, number 7 in all of college football. Bottom line, really freaking good. You got to dial in if you want to beat them. Mike Bobo, help your quarterback out. All right? Help him out. Carson Beck, too, during the week, talking about being a little bit stressed watching these games, just in terms of, like, the technique they're using and how, like, he's trying to figure it out while he's watching the games. Don't know if I love that from him being a psychopath and always thinking about college football when he's watching, or if I'm like, hey, like, let's relax a little bit. We'll see. Side note there, unrelated. Going back to the Texas offense, Kelvin Banks now, we're going to see. We're going to see Kelvin Banks. I don't think it's unfair to say probably the best player on Texas' roster, at least from an NFL draft perspective. Ankle is dinged up. We talked about how often Georgia got after the quarterback last game. If Kelvin Banks isn't at a place where he is able to, serviceable is the wrong word. If Kelvin Banks isn't able to be Kelvin Banks-esque, things get a little bit tricky. So just keep an eye on that whole left tackle situation. I would expect now for Steve Sarkisian, with what we've said about Quinn Ewers and his mobility, with what we just said about Kelvin Banks and his health, I would expect Sark to try and get the ball out of Quinn Ewers' hands early. I would expect Sark to do Sark things and have a lot of window dressing. I'd expect Quintravian Wisner to have a massive role in this game. Dan Jackson, the safety for Georgia, is a program guy through and through on this show. He will have a massive role in this game. When you talk about Steve Sarkisian's offense, the thing that everyone loves to talk to death, blue in the face, is the RPO. And you've had every analyst on the planet tell you what an RPO is, so we won't unpack that. But the role for Dan Jackson here as the safety for Georgia, the run-pass option puts strain on like that second, third level of the defense. If Dan Jackson is able to fill like a nightmare, that's going to be advantage Georgia and force them probably into some situations where they got to start throwing the football a little bit more. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of responsibility on Dan Jackson to both play the run and the pass effectively in this spot. All right? I'm not saying it's all on him. I'm not saying I know the game plan, but I am saying by nature of playing safety there, there's going to be a lot on his plate, a lot of work cut out for him. So here's where like the rock meets a hard place for me. Julian Humphrey is a guy we're going to talk about here in a little bit. He started 10 games for Georgia. He played a lot in this game the first time around. He has since announced his intentions to enter the transfer portal. So you have the quantity of the Texas receivers versus the quantity of the Georgia secondary that already gives you a little bit of a hesitation by nature of the fact that they've had some spots where they don't look all that awesome. The Bama game comes to mind. Mississippi State, numbers inflated, still doesn't look great having a quarterback go for over 300 against you. The Ole Miss game. So all those things concern me a little bit. And then I also pair that with the idea that, like, do we really in our heart of hearts believe that Texas is going to turn the ball over 4 times again and give Georgia that many short fields? Do we really believe that the Texas offensive line doesn't feel some type of way after they allowed 7 sacks to the same exact organization? Also, do we really believe that Kirby Smart's going to lose 2 SEC title games in a row? We believe that? So this is a tricky one. For me, I cannot get out of my head how good Texas looked in the second half once Quinn Ewers kind of caught some rhythm. I can't get out of my head how good they looked against A&M. At certain spots, the edge they're playing with right now, it feels like Texas is starting to click, starting to find their footing. So I'll give you a prize picks, and I'll give you my pick in the game. Matthew Golden, receiver for Texas. We spoke about the quantity. I don't know how you're matching up with all these guys consistently. His number at prize picks, 45.5 receiving yards a game. We'll take the more there, all right? Not our pick in the game just yet, but we'll take him to have the more there. Again, code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds using code HARDCOUNT. So my pick in this game, man, whoever won the first battle, it was going to be very difficult to win the second battle. After we saw Georgia-Texas play the first time, there was, I think, some feeling in our gut that, like, hey, we could see this a second time. I don't believe that Sark will be out game plan a second time. I don't believe that Quinn Ewers will be out of rhythm the way he was the second time. I think Arch Manning and what he brings to the table here is a massive, massive variable that will be, I think, a factor in this game in some way, shape, or form. And I think the Texas defense is going to bring some juice here, and they won't have to defend 3 short fields. So, with that being said, we will take Texas, their first year in the SEC, to win the conference. Final score 31-24. And at that point now, we circle back and say, okay, Kirby Smart, still the best coach in college football, I believe, by nature of his credentials, but you also look at the SEC and say, no, that runs through Texas right now. Sark has the crown. Sark's the guy right now. Also worth noting, last year, people are saying, well, what does that say? A Big 12 team walks into the SEC and takes it over. A Big 12 team also went to Tuscaloosa last year and beat Nick Saban. Kirby Smart, granted, a lot later in the year, played Nick Saban in Atlanta. Did not beat them. So the whole they came from the Big 12 thing, I think, is sort of a foolish conversation. But just to emphasize this is now Sark's deal. Like, it goes through Sark, it goes through Texas, and you don't think that's going to pour some gasoline on what they do in the portal, pour some gasoline on what they're going to do on the recruiting trail? We're kidding ourselves. Texas, for us, you're SEC champs. And as I make that prediction, I see in my head, in my mind's eye, that cut from the interview postgame when he was in Austin, he being Kirby Smart, where the lights are off and he looks like he's telling a ghost story to Holly Rowe. I'm like, all right, well, made our pick, made our bed, let's line it. Hey, speaking of laying in some beds, guys going to be laying in beds in new locations here after they find their spot in the transfer portal. So that's a gross segue. I mean, that didn't make much sense at all. Nonetheless, transfer portal starting to simmer. Not yet open. The Monday after conference championship games finish, we'll have just essentially college football Black Friday. The transfer portal starting to buzz a little bit. Not yet boiling. It's simmering a little bit. You got a lot of names now starting to say, hey, we're planning to enter, or as grad transfers already in there. A couple of names jumped in there already that I think are worth talking about. Julian Humphrey, a guy we spoke about a second ago, has announced his intentions to hit the portal. A Georgia corner now, and you say, okay, he's that transfer from Georgia. He must not have really been able to get on the field then. No, he started 10 games this year. Dude is rangy, 6 foot, long arms, 190, has played a massive role in different games for Georgia. The thing with him that I think is interesting is, like, this is what I just said a few moments ago. Like, this is not some slappy that couldn't cut it at Georgia. And the schools that are being mentioned with him, I think, kind of indicate as much. Texas, that's kind of a funny conversation. You got Georgia playing Texas and Julian Humphrey considering Texas. I digress. Texas A&M in the mix, it sounds like. Bama, Oregon, Miami, a lot of the usual suspects when you talk about the transfer portal. But we know about those teams, they're not going after, like, the scraps in the portal. They're going after some top dogs, no pun intended. Worth noting, too, Julian Humphrey from the state of Texas. Anytime you see a guy leave his state and then hit the portal, as Julian Humphrey did, going to Georgia from the state of Texas, I always feel a little bit like, man, if you could do it a second time, it's got to be a little bit appealing to have the potential to come home and play in front of family and friends and all that. So Julian Humphrey, going to be sought after. Sounds like he's already pretty highly sought after by nature of the schools that are mentioned in relation to him. Dude can play. So keep an eye on Julian Humphrey. Obviously we will, as the portal continues to churn. Miller Moss, USC quarterback. That first game of the year, man, it was like, okay, Heis Miller, baby, it's back. Because the first game of his career, really, where he started against Louisville, he was slicing and dicing. I mean, he's blowing up the timeline. Vibes are immaculate. And then this year happens, and he doesn't have a bad year by any stretch. Didn't have the year that USC needed is probably a better way to say it. I want to make sure we say this very clearly. Miller Moss was not the problem at USC. USC has a myriad of other problems. Miller Moss is a good quarterback. Miller Moss is going to help somebody. The schools that are being tied to him as of right now, Michigan, interesting. Remember, Bryce Underwood, probably going to compete for playing time early, you'd have to believe. Still going to be a true freshman quarterback. If you don't know who I'm talking about, the number 1 player in all of high school football, Bryce Underwood, committed to Michigan from the state of Michigan. But if you're the Wolverines, it might not be the worst thing in the world to bring in an experienced commodity like a Miller Moss who has 1 year left. Would make some sense. I'm also curious to see what happens offensively for Michigan there. I don't think they will be a team that sits back on the wall when it comes to how they approach the portal. Michigan's going to go ham in the portal. They're going to get some guys for Miller Moss to throw the football to if they do, in fact, land Miller Moss. Iowa, interesting with Iowa. They have kind of that portal blueprint when it comes to the quarterback position. Cade McNamara goes there. I think in some ways you could say he helped himself when it comes to what he wants to do in the future. Speaking of the future, though, like a lot of these quarterbacks that hit the portal with 1 year left, they want to help their draft stock. Now, I haven't spoken to Miller Moss personally. I have to believe that's a factor for him going forward here. Who better, though, to help his NFL draft stock than a guy who used to coach the NFL and Tim Lester, the current OC at Iowa. So that's one to keep an eye on. And Louisville also is interesting. Track record with portal quarterbacks as well from a Tyler Shuck. This past season makes sense. Just a couple of schools to keep an eye on. That's including but not limited to those schools in the mix for a one Miller Moss. Caden Salter. I said this yesterday and caught some heat for it, but that's fine. If I were doing a draft of the available portal quarterbacks, I think based on production, based on mobility, based on where college football is right now and the kind of skill set you need to have success at a high level, I love Liberty quarterback Caden Salter. He might be my first quarterback off the board if I'm taking the available transfer portal quarterbacks in a draft right now. Now, this cycle is going to continue to progress. That's okay. So Caden Salter right now for us would be the first pick. Will he be the first pick in 2 weeks' time? Remains to be seen. He jumped in last year to the transfer portal to Caden Salter and ended up withdrawing his name and going back to Liberty. Auburn is going to be the school to watch here, for us at least. The tie to Hugh Freeze and that offense makes a lot of sense. Auburn is, I think for most people, the school that needs a portal quarterback more than anybody, or at least if you were putting an importance on a position for them, that'd be the one that's probably at the top of the list. I think Syracuse being tied to him is a little bit interesting, because the portal quarterback success they had with Kyle McCord, I don't know who wouldn't want to play for Fran Brown tomorrow. That guy is, an absolute stud. And I think that Syracuse has got a tremendous trajectory going forward. Also, fun offense to play in. How many of us wrote off Kyle McCord after he wasn't the guy at Ohio State? They lost to Michigan, and we're saying it's Kyle McCord this, it's Honda McCord that. And then what happens? Kyle McCord goes out and gets buckets. Just out quarterback dueled Cam Ward and knocked them out of ACC title contention. So there's a track record there. There's a blueprint for success there for Caden Salter. I think he's going to be highly sought after and have his fair share of options. This might be the biggest fish in the portal right now, for my money at least. NC State wide receiver Kevin Concepcion, not Kevin Conception, Kevin Concepcion. All right, a little bit of an accent on there. Sounds like the Big Ten and the SEC is going to be a priority for him. Worth noting though, his younger brother, currently committed to Kansas State. Interesting. Not a Big Ten or SEC school, but if you got the chance to go play with your little brother, you don't think that would maybe be appealing? I digress. If I'm him, I want to go somewhere where I can know that I got a quarterback for me and I'm getting the football, and I don't have to worry about that quarterback being able to get me the football, if that makes sense. Some schools that are mentioned with him are also the schools like a Colorado, an Auburn, Penn State. Colorado, we'll see what they are at quarterback next year. You would expect Julian Lewis, the true freshman, to compete for that job. Penn State, is Drew Aller a guy that leaves for the NFL this year? Remains to be seen. At Auburn, again, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. The thing that's interesting about Kevin Concepcion, I think he can pretty much go where he wants. I don't think anybody's looking at Kevin Concepcion and what he did at NC State the last couple of seasons saying, nah, we're good. The thing that I think is curious with him, I'm fascinated by his timeline, because the schools that I just mentioned, Auburn, Penn State, schools across the SEC, Alabama potentially. I'm curious to see if we see Kevin Concepcion make a decision before all the portal quarterback dominoes fall into place. Just food for thought there, but he's going to be highly sought after. He's a dude as much of a can't miss as there is in the transfer portal as of right now. One more guy that jumped in or is going to jump in, Micah Hudson, Texas Tech wide receiver. Now, if that name sounds familiar, because this time last year, 5-star plus caliber kind of player, commits to Texas Tech. Sounds like playing time for him will be a massive factor. Only played 6 games this past year in Lubbock. When you talk to folks about Micah Hudson, one of the first things you hear is like, okay, from the state of Texas, got it, but not really a Texas target necessarily, or he's not targeting Texas, a better way to say it. So if it's not going to be the hometown Longhorns, the schools that are being tied to him as schools to watch are Texas A&M and Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma just landed themselves a new offensive coordinator yesterday in Ben Arbuckle. And they went nuts out there in Pullman. Absolutely bonkers last year with how they operated offensively. John Mateer, we'll see what he does, and if he ends up being a guy that changes schools in the future as well. But all I'll say is Washington State last year averaged 8.5 yards a pass. One of the best averages in college football. I'm Micah Hudson. I want to go play. I want to catch the football. I want to have explosive plays. Ben Arbuckle might be your guy. So we'll keep an eye on those as they progress. I mentioned a bunch of names there. I mentioned a bunch of schools that are, schools to watch for these different prospects. We're going to have a segment here in the next couple of weeks as the portal gets a little bit more populated, portal predictions. So those are just schools to keep an eye on. We'll call our shot here on portal predictions for these guys going forward and have a lot of fun doing so. So another reason to be subscribed. Okay, so speaking of the portal, man, a team that had a lot of success in the portal this past offseason, the Oregon Ducks. Don't look now. They're going for a Big Ten title run right now. Only school left their way, Penn State. CBS, 8 Eastern, Lucas Oil Stadium. Oregon favored by 3.5 right now over the Nittany Lions. We'll talk about Oregon in a second, but the angle for Penn State here is fascinating. Like they're kind of like Paul Rudd and Hot Ones right now, and that's not to disrespect Penn State, but like you went into that weekend last Saturday, and you're probably getting ready for the game. Maybe you're changing your music as you're warming up out on the field, and you start getting some texts. Starts popping up. Hey, Ohio State just lost to Michigan. And so you start figuring out, like, whoa, wait a second. So if we win this game right now, we go to the Big Ten championship. So they're like Paul Rudd and Hot Ones. Who thought we'd be here? Not me. Look at us. Who'd have thought? Not me. That's them right now. And the beautiful part about this, with them kind of backdooring their way into the Big Ten championship game, like, don't look. Penn State could win this football game. Like all the jokes around James Franklin in 3-18 against top 10 opponents, Penn State's got a roster now that has massive opportunity to flip that whole narrative on its head around James Franklin in big games, what you can't do at Penn State. Like they got a roster now. And when you rewind the tape to the genesis of this class right now that has a chance to do something big at Penn State, the Nick Singleton, the Katron Allen, Drew Aller, Abdul Carter, even in the 4-team format, this was the team that was expecting internally to go win the Big Ten and go punch a ticket to the college football playoff, again, with the 4-team model. So right now, you're already punching a ticket to the college football playoff by nature of you only losing one game in the regular season, but you got a chance to totally flip that narrative in its ear. Flip the whole thing on its head. I'll say this too. For Penn State, you're not sure what the future looks like going forward. The time is now. The iron is hot. The window is open. Any kind of cliche you want to put to it, that's true about Penn State right now. 4 quarters. What is it? Tim Tebow, 60 minutes. He says 30 minutes, but it is 60 minutes for the rest of your lives if you are Penn State with a chance to get a bye in the first round of the college football playoff. Not too shabby. For Oregon, man, you got Dan Lanning and Dylan Gabriel, and if they have a T-shirt, it would probably say finish the trip. Maybe it's like a cool Nike T-shirt. Maybe it says like finish the gosh darn trip. Maybe that's not as cool. The bottom line here is Lanning has been here before. Last year, you got Washington, and everyone, myself included, was picking against Washington because you're saying, hey, there's no way that Oregon gets beat twice by nature of how that game went in Seattle. Like, this is it for Dan Lanning. Didn't happen that way. They were favored. Michael Penix Jr. did what he does, lost that football game. For Dylan Gabriel, maybe not quite as explicit of an opportunity, but kind of the same deal. When we talked to him earlier this season, man, we had him on the show, and he was just basically talking about how important it was for him to stay level-headed and stay dialed in because he'd been in a similar situation in Oklahoma where they are undefeated, where he's getting Heisman buzz and all this, that, and the other, and then it ends up just coming crashing down one dreary, I guess it was a noon kick against Kansas when he was at Oklahoma. Now you find yourself on the doorstep of finishing through the tape of having the first seed in the college football playoff, being a Big Ten champion, and doing everything that you sought out to do the first part of the season if you're an Oregon Duck. You're right there, man. You're right there. If you are who you think you are, if you're Oregon, if you are the big bully on the block, if you are that team in college football, you finish the trip, you win these kind of games. There is no letdown. There is no half-stepping. You throttle through. This is a classic speed versus aggression kind of matchup when it comes to the Oregon offense and the Penn State defense. Penn State, man, they got a top 20 sack rate in America. Translation, they'll get after you. Abdul Carter has a very sick sack celebration. It's like the ones out and then he like holsters them. I can't really do it because I'm at the desk and also I'm not Abdul Carter. They're going to try to do that a lot to you in this game. All right. Now the zig to that zag is Dylan Gabriel in this offense under Will Stein. The average catch the snap to ball out time for Dylan Gabriel is 2.2 seconds. So they're not trying to sit back and let Abdul Carter and that entire Penn State defense hunt you down. They're trying to get the ball out in the perimeter and let those dudes work. So I think that what we just spoke to with the aggression and the Dillon Gabriel get the ball out quick, that matchup is worth watching. I mean, obviously, if that number for Dillon Gabriel is in the 3-second range, you're probably getting sacked a lot. How do you push that number to a 3-second to 3.5-second range? Well, you got to be able to lock up on defense. And Penn State plays a lot of man coverage. If they can hold it down on the perimeter and get what I would call like a coverage sack, is probably not the literal definition of this, but it would essentially be a coverage sack. If you can disrupt a Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, a Ferguson, a Trayshawn Holden, if you can disrupt those guys out of their breaks, especially early, give them some problems, that just gives more time for Abdul Carter and those guys to get home. Then I did Sutton to get home. Like, you allow that Penn State front to start to impact the game by nature of you putting a lid on that wide receiving core for Oregon. So if that happens now, things get a little bit messy. And I think messy is exactly the kind of game that Penn State wants to play. No, Lionel. It kind of opens Pandora's box, if you will. Because the best case for Oregon is if things get messy, okay, we sputter, we punt the ball away, we'll play a game in the 20s. I think we can live that way. At worst, though, things get messy in the sense of, okay, we got the ball going the other way on a strip sack, or we got a pick six or whatever, and that turns into points, or, short fields eventually becoming points for Penn State. That's not a way you want to live if you're Oregon. Not a way you want to live, not a way you can afford to live in this game. Just full transparency. So the whole risk it for the biscuit approach is there for Penn State. But now we understand. Anytime you throw a punch, anytime you want to swing for the chin a little bit, you can't also protect the chin yourself. So if you swing big, if you want to get after Dillon Gabriel, you want to be who you are and apply pressure, and I expect that to be what Penn State does, understand now, you expose yourselves for explosive plays. And Oregon is one of the top teams in all of college football in yards per play. So that battle, I think, is going to be fascinating. That's the one, I think, variable, or the one matchup, if you will, that could kind of turn this whole game upside down if Penn State's able to get home. Now, if I'm Penn State, I want to go home from this game, if I'm Andy Koltanecki, and I want to look in the playbook, and I want it to just be an empty binder. Like, you leave nothing uncalled. Nothing, man. And I hope that if I'm Penn State, if I'm a Penn State fan, I'm like, I hope and I pray that we took that loss against Ohio State and analyzed the heck out of it and learned from it. Because that was the feeling coming out of the game against Ohio State. You're like, where's Tyler Warren at? Why are we not getting like? I watched the game against USC, and we got Bo Perbula in the game. We got double passes. We got Tyler Warren lining up at center and catching touchdown passes. Like, where is that? Give me that. That's who we are. We're this creative, offbeat, quirky, fun offense, and we get inside the red zone twice against Ohio State and end up with 0 points. Now, a little bit of a secession there is like, okay, or concession, I suppose. Caleb Downs is the best defensive player in college football for Ohio State. He did a great job taking away Tyler Warren. Good news, there's no Caleb Downs playing for Oregon in this game. So all that's to say, smoke him if you got him. Like, I want everything called here if I'm Andy Koltanecki, if I'm Penn State. You need to make sure your best players impact the game to the nth degree. Because Tyler Warren, special player. Nick Singleton, special player. Katron Allen, special player. You don't go home without them having in the neighborhood of double-digit touches for all those guys. Sounds like a lot. I feel that way. You got to have something like that, I think, to be able to beat Oregon. Now, Drew Aller's a massive part of that, too. I think his legs and what he showed against Ohio State, we could kind of see round two of that in this spot. He's kind of got this Ben Roethlisberger quality to him. Not necessarily a guy that you're thinking is going to break off a 85-yard touchdown run, but, like, it's 3rd and 6. You got home, but he actually broke that tackle, and he rumbles and stumbles and falls forward for a gain of 8, and it's like, okay, first down Penn State. We had him dead to rights, getting that punt return team ready, and now we got to go and line it up again with that unit for another 3 to 4 downs. So the path for Penn State here, I think, is swing hard, swing first. We have not seen Oregon, really since Ohio State, have a roster talent matchup that is in the neighborhood of beating them. Also, we haven't seen Oregon, I don't think, at all this year, be in a spot where they play a similar roster talent and they're on their heels. Like the Wisconsin game, call it what you want. I think a lot of us still felt like Oregon's going to pull this one out. Early in the year, Oregon's finding their footing. I get it. They were on their heels there. But like, there hasn't been a game where Oregon's legitimately behind the 8 ball to a team with some horses and some talent that can actually finish the trip and put them away. Does that happen in this game? For me, so I'm a man of faith, but in college football, seeing is believing. All right? I trust my eyes, and it's a hard thing for me to get behind projecting the future if I haven't seen it in some way, shape, or form. And I have not seen in some way, shape, or form Drew Aller against a real deal, like national title contending roster. Looking at Ohio State, I guess a year ago you would speak about like what Michigan was. Like I have not seen this offense. Now, granted, Andy Coltonecki is a new spin on this, so we'll see. I have not seen enough of this offense to give me confidence like, okay, they're going to be able to go out there and give this Oregon defense problems. They could do it. It's 100% possible. I have not seen it. So with that being said, what have we seen? I've seen Dylan Gabriel answer the bell in big moment after big moment. I've seen Will Stein, whether it be Dylan Gabriel or whether it be Bo Nix, dial up winners. I've seen this wide receiving core be uncoverable at different points in this year. They gave Ohio State problems. So for that reason, I'm going to take Oregon to meet the moment. I think Oregon wins. I actually think Oregon covers. I'm going to go ahead and say that Oregon wins this game 31-21. Keep an eye on how this whole thing goes early, though. That will decide the entire football game. If that happens, again, if you're Dan Lanning, we said it after the Ohio State game. No more potential. No more, oh, yeah, he's got next in college football. No, like you win the Big Ten your first year there. It's not hard to see what the future looks like at Oregon. Oh, but Dylan Gabriel's gone next year. Yeah, guess what? You got Dante Moore. Dante Moore is going to be more than capable of keeping this thing on track. You don't think they're going to crush it in the portal? Currently, they are charging towards another top 10 class on the recruiting trail. Like Oregon is very much so rolling to have more tangible results to put to what they're doing in a win over Penn State in the Big Ten title game would feel like more tangible results, would be more tangible results. The Ducks would be flying. The Ducks would be flying, and Dan Lanning would have not just been a potential guy, like he would have arrived, and we start having conversations around him and what he is in the rankings of the best coaches in the sport right now. Full stop. Full stop. Hey, appreciate everyone tuned in live. Again, tomorrow, it's not the end of the show, but I just want to make sure y'all know. Tomorrow, we have got National Signing Day show on 3 Recruits channel. So this show, The Hard Count, will not be live at our typical time. If you want to know what time we're live at, follow me on the socials. We don't know what time we're going live. It'll be sometime after our National Signing Day show, so make sure you're locked in over there, and we'll let you know. But again, the On 3 Recruits channel is the place to be tomorrow for National Signing Day coverage. It's going to be a real good time. I cannot wait. Cannot wait. Speaking of good times, Clemson, SMU, in Charlotte, North Carolina for the ACC, man. 8 Eastern, ABC. The storylines for this one are just, I mean, they're tasty. They're tasty. Caden Smith and I sit down before every show and just kind of talk through different things we want to hit on throughout the show. During our game previews, we hit on the storylines, and Caden brought the juice here, man. It's just like pinpointing what we want to hit on. We're going through the matchups, if you will. We're going through the breakdown of this game, and you look at where SMU is, and you're like, man, they're actually the inverse of what Clemson is. Because what is Clemson? For the better part of the last few years, the big dog in the conference. Dabo Swinney's got, count them, 8 ACC titles. They don't go to the portal. Like Clemson, I don't think it's a stretch to say they are the team in the conference. I know Florida State won the deal last year, but like for the most part, we can all pretty much agree this has been Dabo Swinney's conference really for the better part of recent history. SMU, we just got here. We're happy to be here. This is awesome. And also, by the way, they took 22 transfers. Clemson famously doesn't really use the portal. SMU is trying to break into this whole thing. And so I think all the pressure on Clemson is fascinating, man, because if Dabo Swinney goes out and beats SMU, wins the ACC, he can look dead in the camera where I don't know who's actually calling this game on the sideline, but he can have that conversation with whoever it is from the ABC crew and look dead in the camera and say, how do you like me now? Portal this, portal that, portal wherever you want to go. We're ACC champs, going to the college football playoff. How do you like me now? That could be the conversation. And notice now, as Clemson has success, the portal discussion, or the portal gripes rather, that they don't use the portal kind of turns down a little bit. I say this a lot about Clemson, but I'll reuse it now for those of y'all that are new to the show. Clemson's Chick-fil-A, man. They do things their own way. They're closed on Sunday, and you don't have an issue with it as long as they give you the best chicken sandwich on the face of the planet. Clemson, you don't care that they're closed on Sundays and don't use the portal as long as they give you ACC titles and compete for national titles. Full stop. So they have a chance now to really drop the mic on this whole situation. Now, on the flip side, can you imagine the fallout if Clemson loses to a team their first year in the conference that is built through the portal and you took no transfers for the most part? Like, the explosion of narratives and opinions would be running rampant. running rampant. I mean, there would be YouTube would be filled up with a lot of Dabo Swinney videos, and we'd probably take part in that. Here's my question in this game, man. Is SMU really like that up front? Like offensively and defensively? Because they've been awesome throughout the course of the year. They're allowing less than 3 yards a carry defensively. They're running it for 4 yards a carry offensively. But you look at their schedule, you're like, okay, I don't see anyone necessarily the caliber of a Clemson right now. Like Duke was a great win. Duke is 9-3 on the year. Like they probably should have lost to Duke if we're just going to be honest here. Now, probably doesn't actually matter in actual results. We talk about what actually happened, and SMU found a way to win a hard-fought football game. But you do wonder a little bit, okay, how does that translate when you play a team like Clemson? Because I was watching Clemson South Carolina game, man, and like Lenore Sellers is a freak show. He broke 18 tackles, and that gets all the discussion in the world, and it should. But we sort of breeze over the fact that like Lenore Sellers is a transformer, and he had to break 18 tackles against Clemson. How many of those were in the backfield? Felt like a lot of them. If Clemson's winning that way up front and getting hands on a quarterback, I love Kevin Jennings. I don't know that he's doing what Lenore Sellers did to this Clemson defense. So that leads me to my next point of like Rhett Lashley, this is your Mona Lisa. He is one of, I think, the best play callers in college football, very quietly. And I was watching a clinic of his getting ready for this segment, and he speaks a lot about giving his quarterback answers, giving him options. Like, how many times did I set Kevin Jennings up for success when it came to what I called in the football game? So they're going to use tempo, yes, 100%, but I think a lot of the time you're going to see Kevin Jennings go out there and have the opportunity to make the right decision. So when it comes to making the right decision, it's pretty important to have time to make the right decision. So I think that the way that Clemson plays on the back end especially is going to be really fascinating. If it's me, I'm getting in their grill, and I'm making our same thing I said about Oregon and Penn State. I'm letting my defensive line hunt. I'm applying pressure, and I'm letting big Peter Woods go do his thing and clog up the middle and stop the run and like putting SMU in a blender in that way. That's all nice to do in theory. Does it happen that way in reality? Because I think Rhett Lashley has a chance now to – whatever talent gap we perceive there to be between the SMU offense that's loaded with transfers and the Clemson defense, it doesn't matter if you're just behind the 8 ball from the jump. With tempo, with spacing, with the ball in the perimeter, like finding our matchups, it just takes one. And I'm speaking about Clemson being like superior from a talent perspective here. SMU's favored. SMU's a 2.5-point favorite in this game. So I don't think that should be just looked over. The thing that's curious to me now as we speak about this matchup is we talk a lot about getting under the heavy bar on this show. What does that mean? The heavy bar for us is like the resistance you've had to face throughout the course of a season from an opponent perspective. And I mentioned SMU, if they lose this game, they're in the college football playoff, regardless. Like, we'll figure out the whole at-large bid stuff. SMU probably gets one of those last spots. They haven't had to step under the heavy bar yet this year, though, really. Like, they lost to BYU in September 6th, I believe it was, on a Friday night. Like, it hasn't been really a gauntlet for SMU to have to run. And so you get credit for doing your deal, man. I mean, you get credit for winning against who you're supposed to win against. But I do wonder a little bit, when you look at Clemson, they have to play South Carolina, who I think is a college football playoff caliber team. Will they get in? Who knows? That's a good football team. Had to play Georgia early in the year. Clemson obviously got their taste of the SEC or the ACC as well, but like I just think it's worth noting now that the resistance Clemson has had to go through, I wonder how much that prepares them for this game, and even further, the resistance SMU hasn't had to go through. I wonder how much that hurts them. Like, Pitt's a great win when they got it at least, but like Pitt is what, like a 7-win football team? 8-win football team? Like, they're not a team that you're necessarily like boosting your college football playoff resume a whole heck of a lot with Pitt, and I love Pitt for the record. This comes down to me for Clemson. Can Cade Klubnik capitalize on the matchups that I perceive Clemson to have? And the matchups to me are on the perimeter. Like, I think SMU's solid across the board defensively, but like Bryant Wesco, TJ Moore, can you hit those explosives downfield, which has kind of been the conversation around Clemson since Garrett Riley got there, since Cade Klubnik became the guy. Can we stretch the field? They've done a better job doing that this season. Can you do that in this game? Because if you can, things open up for Maffa. Also, the subplot of what Cade Klubnik does with his legs. I think that's a massive factor. So the prize picks play I love in this game, Cade Klubnik, I'll take the less than 251 pass yards. I think everyone eats in this game for the Clemson offense. Do they win the football game? Remains to be seen. But code hard count, $5 lineups, $50 in promo funds. So our pick in this game, I think it's back and forth. This might be It's a stretch, but I'll say this. This might be the most entertaining game of the entire afternoon because no result here would really surprise me. I think SMU, if they came out and Rhett Lashley had the boys buzzing and they're dialing it up and they're just putting Clemson in a blender schematically, I'd say, okay, hey, charge it to the game. Rhett Lashley's like that. SMU is like that. They're going to be a force in the college football playoff. Best of luck to you. If Clemson goes out there and is just more talented and the trenches make the difference and Cade Klubnik with his legs makes a difference, that would be the result that I would expect a little bit more frequently if you played this game 10 times. So we'll take Clemson to win this game, win it close. They punch their ticket to the college football playoff, 31-27. So Dabo Swinney, post-game, on the field in Charlotte, wins his 9th ACC title. Whoever is on the call puts a mic in his face. I doubt he would say this, but more power to him if he does. How do you like me now? Portal this, portal that. How do you like me now? We're ACC champs. We're back in the college football playoff. Question my way if you want to, but his way just won another ACC championship. Worth noting. Worth noting, very intriguing. Going to be a lot of fun to break that one down here on the back end of it. That's the one, man, that I think if I were to rank confidence predictions across this show, that's the one that I circle and say, I don't know about that one, man. I do not know about that one. One that I cannot wait for, though, Arizona State, Iowa State, in Jerry World, man. Yeah, this one is awesome, man. This is like the winner of this is in the college football playoff. The loser, there's no at-large bid, man. Like, win in, you're in. This is a true college football playoff kind of conference championship game, and I cannot wait for it. Iowa State, first 10-win season in school history. Gritty Matt Campbell operation. They got 4 wins by 1 score. You don't apologize for it. Arizona State favored by 2.5. This one's going to be a lot of fun because the Matt Campbell stock now, remember when the USC job opened up and it was like, hey, is Matt Campbell the guy? And it feels like every other big job that opens up, Matt Campbell's name gets thrown in there, but he's like, no, I'm staying at Iowa State. And then that stock kind of went down a little bit the last year, and you're like, well, maybe it was good you didn't get one of those jobs. And now it's all the way back up and it's booming. And if they win the Big 12, it's booming once again. Arizona State, man, they are new to the party in some respects, but like they might be one of the most fun teams in college football. You got a young head coach in Kenny Dillingham who's 34 years old and cuts a promo every single time he touches the mic, whether it be on the field or a post-game press conference. Like, dude just exudes electricity. I'd play for him tomorrow, run through a wall for him tomorrow. You got a running back who's doing ridiculous numbers with a name that sounds like a Dr. Seuss character in Cam Scadaboo. Like, how awesome is this game? How awesome is college football? Also, you got a transfer portal quarterback in Sam Leavitt, who's just, dealing the pill like a shady pharmacist. He has been dialed in this season. He's been balling. He's a big reason why they're in this game. So, the curious part about this thing for me, Arizona State now, all the things I just said about them that you love about them with Scadaboo and Leavitt and Dillingham, like, you also loved that Jordan Tyson was one of the best receivers in college football, period. He was a massive part of this offense from a production standpoint. Sam Leavitt, about half, not exactly, but in the neighborhood of around half of his passing yards were to a Jordan Tyson. Over 1,000 yards receiving on the year. So my question then becomes, hey, can you find a way to still create those explosive plays down the field? Kenny Dillingham, offensive background, I think they'll probably bring their best to the table. But Iowa State, man, they're top 20 in nearly every single pass defense category. So I'm doing the math here. Okay, I lose my best offensive weapon on the perimeter, and I'm playing a good secondary, and it's a gritty outfit in Iowa State that's been resilient as all get out and pretty much made their money just never say die. Okay, I don't love that. I don't love that for myself. Also with Iowa State, like they go as Rocco Becht goes in my mind. There's not a ton of like explosive playmakers that I look at for Iowa State and say, hey, that dude can change the entire game. But Rocco Becht, to me, just is a microcosm or he is the Iowa State football personified in one person. Gritty, runs the football, does whatever is asked of him to win the football game. Like, what are you getting from Rocco Becht on that day? It might be a design quarterback run inside the 10-yard line. It might be, hey, Rocco, we need you to get this on 3rd and 6. Whatever you need to get from Iowa State, Rocco Becht's going to give it to you. All right? Much like X. So, here's where I fall on this game, man. Last night, baby girl won't sleep. Like, she's crying, she's fussing, and I'm like, all right, I hear what you're saying. You want us to go grind the Arizona State, Iowa State video to get dialed in, and in her eyes, she was saying yes. And I'm glad she did, because here's the thing, man. There's a lot of things I don't like in this world. Not a lot. There's some things I don't like in this world. One of the main things, I don't like to feel stupid. And I would feel stupid if I picked Iowa State and I saw the numbers that they had given up. They're allowing 5.1 yards a carry on the ground. They're allowing 173 yards per game. They run a 3-3-5 defense, which is what Mississippi State ran against Arizona State. And Cam Scadaboo went buck wild against them. And then also clowned the 3-3-5 defense in his post-game press conference. The 3-3-5 defense, just to add some clarity there, 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 5 DBs. It's built to match up with the spread, not really built to match up with the running back who is just an absolute rolling bowling ball of butcher knives in Cam Scadaboo. 3 of the last 4 games, Cam Scadaboo's gone over 100 yards. He's averaging 5.7 yards a carry on the year. It's a weird year in the Big 12. But give me Kenny Dillingham. Give me the Sun Devils. Give me Arizona State to punch their ticket to the college football playoff. And depending on what happens in the Mountain West Conference Championship, we'll see what happens in the ACC as well. But like Arizona State could very much so have themselves a bye in the first round of the college football playoff after being picked to finish near the bottom of the Big 12 in the preseason. Media, man. What is the media's the worst, aren't they? These guys, man. These guys. So we'll take Arizona State to win the game. And if you're Kenny Dillingham, he keeps cutting promos post-game. Whenever they win a football game, you saw the one on the field when they're getting, storming the field. You see him at the press conference where he's saying, hey, if you hit the over on our win total on the year, invest that back into the collective. It's nice to have those marketable moments where you beat BYU and you have the field storm and all that. But like if you go win the Big 12 championship, words are great. You know what speaks louder than words? Trophies. And Kenny Dillingham would have a trophy to, I think, pour gasoline on what Arizona State is and activate the Valley, as he would say. So the Sun Devils will take them to win the Big 12, and the vibes are immaculate in Tempe. Probably always immaculate, honestly, with the weather being so great, but we'll take Arizona State to win the Big 12 and improve upon those vibes. Now, speaking of vibes, vibes were not great week 2 for Notre Dame because they lose to NIU, and then they became a punchline on social media. Everyone's saying, well, Marcus Freeman can't do this. Remember the Marshall game? Is this a trend? What about Notre Dame? Are they fraudulent? Is Marcus Freeman the right guy? You heard that. Is Marcus Freeman the right guy at Notre Dame? You look up now at the end of the year, Notre Dame has punched their ticket to the college football playoff. They have not lost since then. Give Notre Dame their flowers, man. Like give them their bouquet because they deserve it at this point. They deserve it. We'll unpack as to why here in a second. Make sure you're subscribed. College football, nothing but college football on this wonderful platform that is the On3 YouTube channel right here on the show, The Hard Count. You're a college football sicko because you're probably watching this video at work. Maybe you're supposed to be studying for finals, but you're like, that can wait. I got to get my fix. Thank you for that. Get dialed in right here. Make sure you're subscribed so you can stay a little bit of a – you can get more of your fix as a college football sicko because we're kind of on the same page there. Give Notre Dame their flowers. Lost week 2. Haven't lost since. They're in the college football playoff. Vibes are tremendous. And here's the thing that's most interesting to me because you look at who Notre Dame had to beat to be here, and it's very easy to breeze past it and say, well, yeah, they should have beat Army. They should have beat Navy. Florida State was abysmal. They should have beat them. USC, they were in a different spot. Quarterback, they should have beat them. Yeah, on paper, but guess what? The game's not played on paper. The game is played during the week. The game is played on grass. And the game is played by people. And after they lost to NIU, the opportunity for the people in that building, on that roster and in that locker room, on that staff, had a chance to splinter, point fingers, and to just have a woe is me, discombobulated feeling about this whole situation. And honestly, if they did, nobody would have blamed them. Like taking a gut punch to NIU the week after, beating Texas A&M at their place, and having just that massive mood swing of just elation to just pure embarrassment and borderline college football depression, like, I have to believe now that was a very difficult ship to try and steady. So you know how you steady that ship? Maturity, leadership, culture, adults. Give Marcus Freeman a ton of credit for instilling within his team the resilience and the ability to take a gut punch and embarrassment like they did against NIU and turn that into fuel, turn that into like a fight or flight mentality. Because honestly, like outside of Oregon, who feels better about themselves right now than Notre Dame? Oh, wait, I don't know there's a team because after you lost that game, what have you done since then? You have the #1 victory margin in college football. You have a chance now to just relax during conference title weekend, hang out, probably have a little watch party out there in South Bend and watch the SEC championship game and the Big 12 championship game and all that and the like. You get to watch now knowing your ticket is punched to the college football playoff after you haven't lost since week 2. You got to feel good about yourself. Yes, because you did what you did, but also you did what you did after having to be in fight or flight mode since week 2. And there's 2 ways to look at the fight or flight, I think, gauntlet they've had to run here. What I mean by fight or flight is ever since they lost to NIU, the margin for error has been 0. You probably thought, hey, 11-1 Notre Dame makes it in, but that one loss nobody had penciled in week 2. Maybe you had it week 1, but not week 2. And so the fact that they've had to grit their teeth and bring playoff football energy to every single game now, there's 2 things that are, I think, on the table here. One is the exhale effect. When you exhale, you let down. You go from bringing your best to the table to, okay, well, hey, mission accomplished. Nobody thought we'd make the college football playoff after losing to NIU. We're good now. Let's move forward, whatever. Got through the finish line, and then you get beat the first round of the college football playoff. That's what the exhale effect would do to you. I think the other opportunity here, though, is that the fight or flight they've had to be in the last few weeks, the last few months is a better way to say it, that could be the weapon. Because you have a lot of teams now, yes, they say they're in fight or flight or they believe it's a must-win game, and for some teams that's true, but not like Notre Dame. Not since September have you been in fight or flight mode. So for Notre Dame now, they've been living in playoff football for a long time. I wonder how much of an advantage that is for them when they meet somebody, whether it be in South Bend or somewhere else. I can't wait to see it. I cannot wait to see it. But that could be the weapon for them. I think that honestly could be the overall edge for them in a spot like this. We talk about experience so much being a differentiating factor. Notre Dame haven't played a playoff game exactly this year explicitly, but they've played playoff games since the NIU game. And I think that's worth noting. Now, as we look to the future, here's what I think is the most encouraging thing if you're a Notre Dame fan. On the recruiting side of things, Marcus Freeman has crushed it in the summers, early on in the cycles. Then what happens? As things progress, I think recruits, I don't know exactly what the reasoning is behind this, but I'd have to believe recruits, as they sit with the idea of actually going to South Bend, Indiana, and they're from the Southeast or they're from the West Coast or wherever, probably far from home, it's hard to have that commitment stick. Not just like overall, but we've seen at different points there has been commitments that have not stuck for Notre Dame that are high profile. Peyton Bowen last cycle, Keon Keeley last cycle, Deuce Knight. Like you hear what I'm saying. This isn't like a stretch by any means. Keon Keeley might have been 2 cycles ago. You hear what I'm saying? So when you talk about Notre Dame going forward, I have to believe one of the reasons why you wouldn't go to Notre Dame if I'm a recruit is the stigmatism of what you can accomplish at Notre Dame. Because think about for like this generation of recruit, what have they seen Notre Dame accomplish? Go to the college football playoff and get body bagged by Clemson? Maybe if you have a really good memory, you think about the early BCS days, they go and play Alabama with Manti Te'o and company, and they just get throttled by the Fighting Eddie Lacy's at Bama. Like, that's what you remember about Notre Dame. So I think all that gives into this idea of Notre Dame, good. Are they great? Are they elite? If I want to go play in the NFL, if I want to go achieve all my dreams and play at the highest level in college football, is Notre Dame the place to do that? Maybe as a brand they are, but like in my era, as a high schooler, I haven't seen that from Notre Dame. So the opportunity here for Notre Dame is to break through the glass ceiling. I tweeted it all the way back in the summer. The most dangerous thing you could give Marcus Freeman is to give him the ammunition to walk into any living room in America and say, Marcus Freeman, head coach of Notre Dame, we're a college football playoff team. Come be a part of it. That's the dangerous thing. So imagine they go win 2 games in this thing, and they find themselves in the semifinals. The glass ceiling's been shattered at that point. At that point, you're 8 quarters away from hoisting the trophy. Like, I think that's the opportunity here. If you can prove to people this is truly a new Notre Dame in the new era of college football, that's only going to pour gasoline on talent acquisition. That's only going to pour gasoline on what Notre Dame is in the future. So for Notre Dame, it's already a success to get to the college football playoff, but the opportunity of what they could accomplish, should they keep the pedal to the metal and should they go win a couple games, glass ceiling could be shattered. And tell you what, man, you could use that glass that's been shattered from the ceiling to build a nice little trophy case. Should be a good time. Should be a good time. All right, I want to touch on this before we get out of here. The Mountain West Conference Championship game, 8 Eastern, Fox, Boise, Idaho. Okay, so no neutral site for the folks out there in the Mountain West. Respect the heck out of that. This may be for a bye in the college football playoff if Boise State wins. If UNLV wins, probably not, but regardless, it's for a spot nonetheless. Boise State favored by 3.5. They played this game in Vegas during the year. The final score was 29-24, favoring Boise State, obviously getting it done. It's hard to beat a team twice. Here's where I fall on this, man. In that game, Ashton Jeanty got 33 carries. Like, the game plan for Boise State, the identity is very much so aligned with number 2, and it should be. He's the best running back in college football. I think if Boise State makes the college football playoff, he will be the best player in the 12-team bracket. I don't think that's a stretch to say. I worry a little bit around living so much by Ashton Jeanty, because I believe since October, like, there's been all but one game that Ashton Jeanty has got less than 30 carries in. Now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we saw early on in this game, UNLV, the Fighting Barry Odoms, dial it up and do a pretty good job of containing Ashton Jeanty. Now, the tricky part is you can contain Ashton Jeanty for a half. The Boise State running back is going to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Can you contain him for another third quarter, fourth quarter situation? Because he wears on you, man. He wears on you. He's averaging close to 9 yards a carry, almost 10 yards a carry because of that factor, because of the way that he's able to eventually get his. I think about Boise State, though, and I think about the idea of, like, living by the three-point shot. It's awesome when it's falling. You rely on it. You go to it. You game plan for it. But at some point in time, man, you got to have another punch. You got to have something else to go with it. And I'm not saying Boise State doesn't have that, but I am saying with how they've played the last really month and a half to 2 months, it has been very Ashton Jeanty-centric. The UNLV go-go offense, man, Haj Malik Williams, they get a second chance at Boise State. I'm going to go ahead and take UNLV to shock the world, to pull off the 3.5-point upset and win the Mountain West and punch their ticket to the college football playoff. So Boise State goes down. Ashton Jeanty still definitely in Heisman contention, definitely still should be in New York City for the ceremony, but we'll take UNLV and the go-go offense and the revitalized, you hope, UNLV defense getting a second chance. Ashton Jeanty remembering what he did against them, going for over 100 yards on 33 carries. I think UNLV gets it done, and they hoist that trophy in Boise, Idaho. Electric factory, man. Absolutely electric. Conference title weekends here. And I know there's a lot of us that are saying, well, hey, I don't know if you're a college football personnel person, you're all that excited about having conference title weekend and National Signing Day. And oh, by the way, the portal's about to open up. But if we're college football sickos, like, this is our time of year, baby. This is our time of year. Again, National Signing Day show tomorrow on the On3 Recruits channel. Myself, Josh Newberg, essentially super glued to this desk for the next couple of hours tomorrow morning. Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons bringing scoop and then some. It's going to be a good time, man. Want y'all a part of it. We appreciate the heck out of y'all, man. This has been a tremendous season, and we're just now hitting the reset button. We're full throttle all year long, but we got games, man, until January 20th. So let's lock in. Let's make the most of this. For Trey Yannity, for Caden Smith on the ones and twos, man, I'm JD PicKell. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see you next time.